Warning: the following video contains language that some people may find offensive.
You've got the first two questions here for me are related to one another. I want to answer them both at once. The first one says, as a teacher, what is your view on censorship? When is it essential that a teacher censor material? The second one is, as the principal of the school, what would you deem to be inappropriate and why? Now, as the answer to the first question, as a teacher, especially of high school kids, I don't want to censor anything ever for the most part. I treat you guys as young adults, and I want to have adult conversations with you about adult topics and have debates and stir the pot. If I was the principal, on the other hand, I might have a very different answer to that. You have to remember, we live in Malaysia. ISKL, the International School of Kuala Lumpur, exists in Malaysia. And Malaysia is a country that has very restrictive laws on how people can speak. I've gone here to Freedom House, an international non-governmental organization which ranks freedom of the press in different countries. According to Freedom House, in 2013, they rated Malaysia's press, which is about freedom of the speech, as not free on a score index of 0 from most free to 100 worst. Malaysia scores 64, and that means essentially that Malaysia, you can't say what you want to when you want to in Malaysia. So if I was a principal concerned about the legal future of the school, I'd say to my teachers, hey, keep it under control. We've got a school to run here and we don't want to get in trouble with the government.
All right, so censorship is a difficult issue. When it comes to the public forum, say the United States sense of First Amendment rights, you have to have freedom of speech that is offensive. You have to, let me put it this way, you have to allow for the possibility of offensive speech being protected. Okay, that's what the First Amendment is about. All right, so having said that, schools are a unique situation. Schools are not a public forum. So in a school, the administration is like the publisher, and me as the advisor to the yearbook would be like the editor-in-chief, and my students are the production crew. They're the journalists, the photographers, the production editors, things like that. The reason I say this is because we have an audience, and that audience has to be treated a certain way, and there are certain appropriate materials for that audience. Let's take art classes and nudity. When I was teaching at the University of Alaska, nude photography was a part of the curriculum for advanced students before they did their graduate work. In high school, a student would say to me, well, they're doing it, why can't I? And the answer is because you're still a high school student. Once you leave high school, you can pursue that theme, but you can pursue themes that are similar without having content of your art that might be inappropriate for the entire audience of your school.
Do you think that for some subjects it would actually take away from the lesson if one were to censor the material?
We are teaching works which at some point were actually censored, right? So censorship is subjective, in relation to time and place and the age of the students that we're dealing with. And of course, as a teacher, your preference is not to censor, because I think students need to have the full picture. I can understand where some material may not be appropriate, therefore you either don't use it at that point of time, or you'd have to couch it with some preamble to the students for them to understand that some material may be sensitive or may be a little mature. So that way the students, are not affronted by something that they might be offended by, or parents might be offended by.
As an educational institution, is it our job to push the boundaries and engage in a few controversial topics?
Always. I mean, again, it comes down to subject maybe. I mean, perhaps in mathematics, pushing the boundaries on social issues isn't something that happens because that's not the topic. But in social studies, it's very much a part of what we do. And especially as we move beyond history and we start talking about current events, then controversial subjects tend to be the more interesting ones. And they're probably the ones that are more worth discussing because if they're controversial, there's probably two very radically opposing viewpoints. We want to look at both viewpoints and have students try and reach their own conclusions on those things.
Pushing boundaries, yes, I think that's what learning is about. Yeah, so I think that is our job, and as a teacher, I think it's preparing them to know what the boundaries are and what they can and cannot push in certain times, certain places with certain people. And being in a multinational environment, they also need to be aware of the varying cultural, religious, social sensitivities that might be necessary for them, to be aware of. But pushing is something that I think all students need to be aware of, and that is a growth, that is learning and understanding appropriateness in time and place.